Welcome to the Verdict Zone, where today we're serving up a story that proves truth is stranger, and sometimes more unhygienic, than fiction. Imagine this: it's your very first Christmas with your fiancé's family. You're ready for festive cheer, maybe some awkward small talk, and a nice big holiday meal. But what happens when a simple dinner shortage spirals into a family tradition so bizarre, so questionable, that it makes you wonder if you've stepped into an alternate reality? This is a story about where we draw the line. Where does embracing your new family's quirks end, and protecting your own dignity begin? Grab your popcorn, because we're about to dive headfirst into the laundry bin of family drama. Our story begins with a woman, let's call her Clara, heading to her fiancé's family home for her first Christmas celebration with them. Her fiancé, let's call him Mark, gives her a little heads up on the car ride over. He casually mentions, "Hey, just so you know, my mom didn't make quite enough food for everyone." Clara, being a reasonable person, thinks okay, no big deal. Maybe the portions will be a little smaller, or we'll run out of potatoes. It's a holiday, things happen. She's expecting a normal, if slightly poorly catered, Christmas dinner. What she was not expecting was a ritual that would test the very limits of her comfort, sanity, and her relationship. They arrive. The house is festive, everyone seems nice enough. The family gathers around the table, and the aroma of the slightly too small Christmas dinner fills the air. Just as they're about to eat, Mark's mother claps her hands together and makes a cheerful announcement. The mother then explains the family's unique and time-honored tradition. Since there isn't enough food for everyone to have a full serving at once, they determine the serving order in a very special way. They grope around, find a pair, and the size of the underwear they pull out determines their place in the dinner line. Smallest size goes first, largest size goes last. Clara just stares, utterly dumbfounded. She's trying to process this. Did she hear that correctly? They're going to, what? She looks over at her fiancé Mark, expecting him to be laughing, to say just kidding. But he's not. He's smiling, like this is the most normal thing in the world. The other women in the family are already lining up blindfolds at the ready. A wave of disbelief washes over Clara, and she lets out a nervous, incredulous laugh. It's just so absurd. But Mark's face immediately darkens. "What's so funny?" he asks, his tone defensive. "This is my family's tradition." "I'm happy to just go last. Seriously, it's fine. I'll wait until everyone else has eaten." She thought this was a perfectly reasonable compromise. She wasn't insulting them. She was just opting out of the underwear groping part of the evening while still respecting the food shortage issue. But her compromise was not accepted. Mark leaned in closer, his voice low and insistent. "Can't you just be agreeable for one night? It's not a big deal. You're making this awkward." Suddenly, Clara wasn't just uncomfortable. She felt pressured and cornered. This wasn't a quirky little tradition like singing a silly song or wearing matching pajamas. This was intimate and unhygienic. And his pressure for her to just be agreeable was the breaking point. She looked at him, then at the laundry bin, and then at the smiling faces of his family, and a switch flipped in her mind. This was not okay. This was not the family she wanted to join. Quietly, but with firm resolve, she pulled out her phone, opened her rideshare app, and called an Uber. She stood up from the table, whispered a polite but firm, "I have to go," and walked out the front door, leaving a stunned silence and a bin of dirty laundry behind her. The aftermath was exactly as you might expect. The car ride home was silent, but her phone blew up with texts from Mark. He was furious. He accused her of being judgmental, of thinking she was too good for his family and their traditions. He said she embarrassed him and ruined Christmas. But Clara was left with a single, burning question. Was she wrong? Was she the one who overreacted? Was leaving the only sane response when her polite and reasonable compromise was completely rejected? Or should she have just been agreeable, held her breath, and rummaged through her future father-in-law's underwear for a slice of turkey? Let's unpack the weirdness, because there is a lot to unpack here. First and foremost, let's talk about informed consent. Mark gave her a heads up about a food shortage, but he conveniently left out the part about the bizarre and deeply personal ritual attached to it. He ambushed her. A tradition this unusual, especially one involving other people's used undergarments, is not a minor quirk you spring on someone. It's a significant, boundary-pushing activity that absolutely requires a detailed warning ahead of time. He set her up to fail by putting her on the spot in front of his entire family. He didn't give her the chance to mentally prepare or to decide if this was a boundary she was willing to cross before even getting in the car. Next, we have to address the giant, hygiene and autonomy-shaped elephant in the room. Does a tradition involving used underwear cross a basic boundary of personal comfort and hygiene? Yes, 1,000 times, yes. This isn't about being too good for someone, it's about fundamental principles of bodily autonomy and sanitation. No one should be expected, let alone pressured, to handle the dirty laundry of people they barely know as a prerequisite for getting a meal. It's one thing to have a quirky family inside joke. It's another thing entirely to have a ritual that is objectively unhygienic and forces an uncomfortable level of physical intimacy. Clara had every right to say no to something that made her feel viscerally uncomfortable. Her body, her choice, her boundaries, period. This brings us to the pressure to conform. Mark's key argument was that she should just be agreeable, but is being agreeable more important than maintaining your own comfort and dignity? Absolutely not. In a healthy relationship, your partner should be your biggest advocate. They should be the one to run interference with their family, especially when they know a situation might be uncomfortable. Mark's job in that moment was to say, "Hey Mom, Clara's not comfortable with this, so she's just going to eat last, and that's okay." Instead, he sided with the bizarre tradition and pressured her to violate her own boundaries for the sake of appearances. That's not a partnership. That's a demand for submission. True agreeableness in a relationship is about finding compromises that work for both people, not one person steamrolling the other. Finally, let's look at her escape. Was calling an Uber and leaving an overreaction, or was it the only sane response? Clara tried to find a middle ground. She offered a simple, elegant solution: "I'll go last." This solution respected the food shortage while also respecting her own boundaries. It was a perfect compromise. When her fiancé and his family rejected that compromise and continued to pressure her, what other option did she have? Staying would have meant either caving to something she found fundamentally wrong, or sitting at the table in a tense, awkward standoff for the rest of the night. By removing herself from the situation, she took back control and protected her own well-being. It wasn't an overreaction. It was a necessary act of self-preservation. So, after sifting through all the dirty laundry of this case, it's time for the final ruling. The verdict is in. Clara, you are absolutely not the a-hole. Your fiancé set you up for failure by not warning you about this incredibly strange tradition. A ritual involving rummaging through a bin of used underwear is not a minor family quirk. It is a significant and frankly bizarre ask of a new partner. You did the right thing by offering a polite and reasonable alternative, which was to simply eat last. When he and his family rejected your compromise and prioritized their family's weirdness over your comfort and dignity, you were right to remove yourself from the situation. The moral of this story is simple. Love means bringing someone into your world and making them feel welcome, not ambushing them at the border with your weirdest, most unhygienic customs. Now we want to hear from you. What is the absolute weirdest family tradition you have ever encountered?